Chapter 225. The officers were in shock, and Elsa reeled as well. She knew that all cultivators were out of the ordinary. Wilbur was nothing but calm. He muttered a simple chant and snapped his fingers once. Thunder bulbs. The next moment, two fist-sized balls of lightning appeared above Wilbur's head. They glowed with fluorescent lightning and crushed both of Dorson's clones at once. At the same time, Dorson's real body pulsed with a powerful spirit pressure before disappearing completely. Wilbur did not stop there. He placed his palms together as he cried out, "Quad Thunder!" The four lightning balls appeared once again, connected by chains of sparks and lightning. The space before Wilbur shook, and Dorson's figure was revealed as he was caught right in the middle of the Quad Thunder spell. Wilbur smiled. "That was impressive. But you've got a long way to go compared to me." Dorson's face was creased in pain and shock. He did not expect his special skill to be taken down just like that. His opponent had done so in such a short period of time that Dorson did not even manage to react. What he did not know was that Wilbur had reached a terrifying level of spirit energy ever since he had gained the dragon's chant. Dorson's camouflaging and cloning skills were no match for Wilbur. Elsa heaved a sigh of relief at the sight. Only a cultivator would be able to take down another cultivator. Elsa honestly felt like she would not have been able to catch this guy. Just as everyone else was sighing in relief, something happened. Dorson let out a growl, his body lighting ablaze with spirit flames as a powerful spirit pressure spread through the air. The officers could not handle the pressure and felt their legs turn jelly as they stumbled backward. Even Elsa had no choice but to take cover with Sherry in tow in order to hide from this pressure. Wilbur frowned. He did not expect Dorson to still have the strength to struggle. It seemed like Dorson had used some secret cultivation skill which had increased his spirit energy at the cost of doing a great deal of damage to his body as well. Sure enough, Dorson was able to break free from the Quad Thunder spell under the influence of his newly increased spirit energy. He formed another clone, which lunged at Wilbur. "Be careful, Wilbur," Elsa cried out in shock. Dorson looked positively terrifying right now. Wilbur sighed. He put his palms together, muttering a few chants before shouting, "Way of Thunder!" A ball of lightning exploded from Wilbur's palms, and a thick bolt of lightning lashed out in the form of 1,000 knives towards Dorson. A deafening sound rang through the air. Dorson's clone was reduced to dust as the bolt of lightning burned right through his body, as well as demolishing the 10 or so houses 100 meters behind him before the power finally dissipated. The dust cleared, and Dorson's charred corpse lay on the ground lifelessly. The Special Forces Department was in shambles. All the officers, including Elsa, looked around themselves in shock. Wilbur was powerful, but how were they going to explain such terrible damage to the higher-ups? "Why did you kill him?" Elsa demanded in annoyance. Wilbur shrugged. He was literally fighting with his life on the line. "Even if I hadn't killed him, he would have drained himself of energy within the minute and collapsed anyway. He might lose his mind and attack you guys for nothing. It wasn't worth it." Those words shut Elsa up at once. It sounded like Wilbur had done this entirely for their own good, and there was nothing she could say in retaliation. However, Dorson had committed serious crimes, and it was clear that there was someone ordering him from behind the scenes. Now that he was dead, any hope of finding the mastermind was gone. Just stop overthinking it. You wouldn't be able to get him to talk anyway. Wilbur knew from the way Dorson had put his life on the line that the man had no intention of living anymore, and his death was inevitable. There was nothing Elsa could have forced out of him. Elsa let out a long sigh, unable to respond. Wilbur did make sense, but how was she going to write this report? Chapter 226. "Is Chloe all right?" Wilbur asked. Elsa shook her head. "She's fine, but Sherry's condition is a lot worse." Wilbur walked up to Sherry. Due to him protecting her organs with his spirit energy in time, her condition was not fatal despite being badly hurt. Sherry burst into tears when she saw Wilbur, unable to say a word. She had finally understood how terrifying of a situation she had gotten herself into, one that had almost cost her life. The world was hardly what she saw it as, and people this ruthless did exist. They were absolutely terrifying. Wilbur saw that Sherry was truly scared out of her wits. He sighed. "See how dangerous that was? Please don't do stuff like this anymore. Sherry nodded weakly. After what had just happened, she would never dare to do such a thing ever again. Just then, the ambulance had finally made it to send Sherry to the hospital. At Wilbur's suggestion, he and Elsa went to where Chloe had been staying. Chloe was not a suspect, and thus she was not in a holding cell. She had her own room, with enough freedom to move around. Wilbur and Elsa entered the room, and Chloe looked at the both of them in terror. It was clear that the fight just now had scared the living hell out of her. Wilbur comforted Chloe. Don't be scared. Chloe forced herself to calm down when Wilbur piped up again. Forget everything you saw tonight. Everything that happened just now needs to be kept top secret. I know, Chloe said at once. Wilbur nodded, looking at Elsa. There shouldn't be any more danger now. Let her go home after you're done with the questioning. Okay, Elsa said. Wilbur waved goodbye to Chloe, turning to leave. Chloe stared at Wilbur's fading figure in a daze. The next afternoon, Elsa felt completely drained as she returned to Sea Lake Island with Farron and entered Wilbur's room. Wilbur ended his meditation and opened his eyes. What's up? Elsa shook her head and said, I looked that up. His name is Dorson Ches. He's not a local. He entered the country 5 years ago, but never joined any gangs or corporations. Everyone knows he works for Joy Corp though, Farron said. Wilbur said, well, there's no point in just knowing that if we have nothing to prove it. This is just great. Jordan Pavian's dead. And now this guy's dead too. Joy Corp gets to worm its way out of this scratch-free again, Elsa said. Wilbur said, Dorson's one of the sacrifices Joy Corp kept around, so he can't have any ties to them that can be penalized. Elsa seemed pretty angry, but there was nothing she could do. Dude, Joy Corp really tried to screw you over. Do you want to teach them a lesson? Farron said with a frown. Wilbur shook his head. It's just a competition between businesses. There's no point in doing that. Besides, Joy Corp's really big. Your father won't agree to it if Seacher Town's economy is involved. You've got a pretty positive outlook on this, haven't you? Elsa teased. Wilbur flashed a smile. Joy Corp has just suffered a huge loss. Trust me, they're going to release a statement soon. What do you mean? Elsa asked. Wilbur said, they know of me now, and they're going to know about my connections to Cape soon too. I'm pretty sure they'll do something about it. What could they do? Elsa asked, still confused. Just then, Farron said, Joy Corp might not have any evidence that Cape or the authorities can get a hold of, but it's undeniable that Jordan framed Cape and Dorson killed him for it. Based on that alone, Joy Corp's going to have to slip something good our way if they don't want Cape to hound them for what happened. They can't afford any more trouble as this could affect their company and land them in a serious crisis. Wilbur's right. Elsa understood at once and nodded along. This will be good for Cape then. That's all thanks to Wilbur. If Dorson managed to escape after his assassination, both sides would have been in a tie and Joy Corp would have no reason to let up. They might even be smug about it, Farron said. Elsa shrugged, shaking her head. I'm not as business-minded as the likes of you. Farron's expression darkened at once. What's wrong with being business-minded? Is your mind any better? Are you calling me stupid? Elsa fumed in retaliation. Wilbur sensed a fight was brewing and hurried to stop the both of them. That's enough. God. I can't believe you two were able to start a fight over something like this. Wilbur was powerful enough to put an end to the argument. Farron and Elsa scoffed, turning away. Wilbur shook his head in exasperation. Those two were like oil and water. Just then, Elsa looked at Wilbur with a mysterious smile on her face. Wilbur, I've got something to ask you. What is it? Elsa smirked. Those, skills you used last night. Like the thunder bulbs, and the way of thunder, oh, and quad thunder too. They were awesome. How did you do it? Only cultivators can do that. I know, but could you teach me a thing or two about it? I feel like I'm powerless the moment there's a cultivator involved in a case. Wilbur glanced at her. It's not as easy as you think. Besides, you've grown past the optimum age to begin cultivating. Elsa was a little upset but pressed on anyway. Farron's cultivating too. Why can't I? Wilbur was speechless, turning to look at Farron. Farron coughed. You brought it up first. I just elaborated on it. Wilbur was certain that Farron had just been showing off in front of Elsa. That was fine, he supposed. But cultivation was either inherited, developed through training, or an innate talent. It was also important that the cultivator begin cultivation at a young age. That was the only way they would succeed. It would be hard for someone at Elsa's age to begin cultivating unless they were to trade themselves a marrow cleansing pill from the dragon's altar. The trade required a good amount of treasures in exchange that were quite hard to get. Yet, considering his friendship with Elsa, Wilbur did not know how to turn her down either. He fell silent for a while before saying, "I'm not saying it's impossible, but you'll have to wait for a chance to come by." "I'm cool with that." Elsa lit up at once. "I'll wait. As long as it takes." Wilbur smiled, saying nothing. Just then, Faye came home surprisingly early from work. She was all smiles as she walked into Wilbur's room, greeting Farron and Elsa as well. "You're back early today," Wilbur said with a smile. Faye sat down. Joy Corp sold all of Willow Corp's shares at a stupidly low price. "Oh, does that mean they're backing out of the competition over the commercial district?" Wilbur asked. Faye nodded. "Yup, this is their way of saying they're letting go of the commercial district project altogether, as Cape won't hound them about what happened to Jordan and Dorson." "What are you going to do?" "Well, I'm not going to push it since they've offered us an out. I'm going to focus on the commercial district now and make sure Willow Corp's merger is settled as soon as possible." Chapter 228. Wilbur nodded. "That's the way to go. Battling it out is only a last resort. You've got the right idea. We'll let them go this time." "Say, shouldn't we celebrate such a big win?" Farron asked. Faye smiled. "Sure. This one's on Cape. Let's have some fun." "Woohoo!" Farron and Elsa cheered at the same time. Wilbur smiled. It was nearly impossible for anyone to ask these two out any other day. However, they had been so enthusiastic and sincere in helping him. He could tell that they could be trusted now. Just then, Jose showed up out of nowhere. Wilbur let him in. "Sir, I've got something to tell you." Jose glanced at the other people around and hesitated. "It's just us." "Get on with it," Wilbur said. Jose said, "Okay then. Marcus sent me $100 million and told me to pass it to you as thanks for saving him." Farron and Elsa buried their heads into their mugs of tea. Wilbur's life was far too mysterious, and the two of them knew better than to question it too much. Wilbur said, "I only helped him because of you. It was to help you pay off your debt to them. You can give him the money back." "I said that, but Marcus insisted that I didn't owe him anymore, and he didn't want to owe you a favor either. He insists that you take the money, or he won't feel good about it." Wilbur chuckled. I guess I'll take the money then. But I'm not very interested in it. Find somewhere to donate it." "Yes, sir. I think Miss Eve would be more suited to handle the donation," Jose sold. Wilbur nodded. Jose's duty was to protect Faye, and it was true that he did not have the time for affairs like this. Wilbur suggested, "Why don't you just donate it under Cape's name, Faye? Don't go through the full process, though. It'll take too much from the original amount. Get two people to donate it directly to a poor village and supervise the financial activity." Faye nodded. "Okay, I'll get it done tomorrow." She then told everyone where to meet, and the four friends set out for dinner. They arrived at a rather small restaurant called Julia's Diner. They led everyone inside, all while saying, "The food here's pretty good. I'd even say that it's better than what some hotels serve. Cape's had our company dinners here several times. I quite like it here, but I'm not sure if you three are all right with it." "Of course I am. Diners are the best. Screw hotel food," Farron said at once. Due to the last-minute decision, the restaurant was packed and there were no private rooms available. Faye ordered for everyone, and they chatted while waiting for the food to arrive. Just then, a group of customers came out of the private room, swaying left and right on their way out. Elsa saw that and flagged down the nearest server at once. "Is there a room for us now?" The server nodded, asking for them to wait a little until the room was cleaned. Elsa nodded. "It is a little noisy outside, and the four of them could barely hear each other." Just then, one of the people from the customers that just walked out of the room, a man in his 30s wearing a suit, noticed Elsa. Elsa had a tall build and radiated an air of valiance about her. This made her rather attractive to men as well. The man looked at her and walked over at once. He noticed Faye after that, and his shock only grew. He exclaimed out loud at Faye and Elsa, "Hello there, ladies. Wanna join us? All drinks on me tonight." He completely ignored Farron and Wilbur as he said that. Chapter 229. Wilbur shook his head. It was clear that the guy had a bit too much to drink and was not thinking straight. What a pervert. Farron frowned in annoyance as well. Elsa shouted, "Go home if you've had too much to drink. Don't get yourself into trouble for nothing." Faye rested her head on Wilbur's shoulders, giggling softly. The man was infuriated by the harsh rejection. Before he could even say anything, two other men came up behind him and said, "How dare you? Do you even know who he is?" "I don't give a fuck who he is. Get out of my way," Elsa said coldly. One of the guys got angry at once. "This here is Mr. Leon from the Bureau of Commerce and Trade. How dare you speak to him like this?" "Is that so? Big deal." Elsa was clearly annoyed now. The men, who were all significantly tipsy, were all the more enraged. After all, they had just been humiliated in public and caught the attention of many. The man named Mr. Leon sneered coldly. "Listen up. No one gets away after getting on my bad side. We'll forget about this if you to join Mr. Leon for a round of drinks. You'll be sorry if you say no," the other men said viciously. Wilbur's expression darkened at those words, and so did Farron's. Faye was the only person still smiling, stifling her laughter into Wilbur's shoulder. There were hardly any people who dared to speak this way to them. Elsa lost her temper and threw a punch at one of the men, hitting him right in the eye. The guy keeled over at once. Before he even fell to the ground, Elsa had given him another punch in the stomach. The guy cried out in agony, dropping heavily on the floor as he clutched his stomach and groaned. Elsa had only punched the guy twice, and that was enough to do the trick. The men behind Leon could hardly believe their eyes. The girl was quite a feisty fighter. The commotion made everyone else in the restaurant look over. The men behind Leon gulped and eventually cracked their knuckles, gearing up for a fight. Just then, Farron asked, "Are you guys tired of living? Who the fuck are you?" One of the men was still trying to keep up the big talk despite clearly shaking in his boots. Farron smirked. "Leon. Was it? You're going to go home and submit a written report to your superior. Tell him that Farron Campbell told you to hand it in, and then you'll know who I am." Elsa took out her police badge as well, grabbing the man from earlier by the collar and nearly shoving the badge into his eyes. "Take a long and hard look. You'd be banging out in a holding cell tonight if I wasn't out with my friends. I'll get back to you when I remember to, and you'll be done for. Get lost now." The man took a look at the badge and his jaw dropped open. Chief of the Special Forces Department? That was someone none of them could afford to mess with, both rhetorically and literally. People from this department were terrifyingly strong and could crush them any time. Leon, whose name was actually Leon Latour, was nothing compared to this woman. The men's hearts fell to their stomachs, not knowing what to do. However, among them, Leon was the most terrified. Elsa was definitely terrifying on her own, but Farron's words had sent a chill down Leon's spine, making him fear for his life. Anyone who dared to say something like that was definitely part of the government. The guy's name was Farron Campbell. There was only one Campbell family known in all of Cardin Province. The thought itself made Leon nearly pass out from terror. Chapter 230. If that guy really was related in any way to the Campbells, Leon would be done for. He scrambled up to Farron and the rest, kneeling on the ground. "Please. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I should have known who I was talking to. I'm really sorry. Please let me go." "Get out of the way. Don't be a nuisance here. I'm in the middle of my dinner," Farron said coldly. Leon immediately knew there was no point in begging any further. If he had kept on doing that, he might suffer a fate worse than just losing his job. He got to his feet and offered a deep bow to Farron and the rest, apologizing one last time before fleeing with his men in panic. The sight left everyone else in the restaurant stunned. This woman was an incredible fighter, and that guy had gotten those hooligans to apologize on their knees just like that. Who were these people? Just then, Elsa glanced at the server and asked, "Is the room ready?" The server nodded weakly, and the four of them entered the room at last to get away from everyone's watchful eyes. Once it was just them, They exchanged looks before bursting out into a fit of laughter. Those incompetent idiots were truly everywhere, abusing what little power they had and thinking that they were unstoppable after getting a little drunk. What a joke. People like them could only hide and run in the face of those with real power. Very soon, the food was served. The four of them feasted at once, and what happened earlier was quickly forgotten. What they did not know, however, was that Leon returned home with a heavy heart and a frantic mind. The fear in him kept growing stronger and resulted in him suffering a heart attack, which landed him in a hospital. The four friends wined and dined to their heart's content before going back to Sea Lake Island and falling fast asleep. Just then, over in Kim's office, she sighed audibly before dialing a number. The call connected a while later, and Kim stood up straight. "I'm sorry, High Lady. Dorson Ches is dead because of me, and I had no choice but to let go of the Commerce District to avoid further trouble. Please punish me accordingly." A while later, the sound of a woman's laugh could be heard from the phone. "I know about that. It's not a big deal as long as Project M isn't affected." "Is it? Project M is completely fine." "All right. But she deserved to be punished too. A year's salary then." "Thank you, High Lady. There's one more thing." "Yes?" "There's a man named Wilbur Penn. He's a really mysterious guy. I suspect he's the boss of Cape International." "What makes you say that?" "This man holds no position in Cape, but he's pretty involved with everything that happens to them. He was the one who killed Dorson. I heard from you before that the real boss of Cape International was once the leader of the Abyss Mercenaries and is a phenomenal fighter." There was no response from the other end for a while. Eventually, the other person said, "This is important information, but you shouldn't go look him up. He'll expose you if he really is who you think he is. I'll send someone over. They'll get in touch with you soon." "Yes, High Lady." The call ended, and Kim's expression was creased with worry. Dorson was dead, and the High Lady had barely asked about it. It was clear that people like them were hardly anything to her. However, that was just their fate. The next afternoon, 4 cars set out for Sea Lake Island, stopping not too far from the bridge. Charles Quinta, the manager on shift that day, scrambled to report to Wilbur. Wilbur walked out not long after, staring at the cars in confusion. A figure emerged from the car at the front and stared at Wilbur from afar.